A man walks into a consulate, a journalist, and vanishes. It's pretty fucking amazing. The cameras are in the front door, the cameras on the back door. He walks into the consulate. His wife, or the woman who would be his wife, is standing outside waiting for him to come back. And he never comes back. Like any other woman who loves the man that just walked into the consulate, goes to the door, ferociously knocks on the door. Where's Jamarl? And a person with a blank face stares at him. There's nobody here. What do you mean there's nobody here? He walked through that door. I'm sorry, miss. There's nobody here. What she didn't know was that there were a group of men with thick necks, 18, that came from Saudi Arabia with a bone saw that was bit for purpose, and a doctor who was apparently one of the fastest at chopping up bodies, and they, unfortunately for her and for Jamal Khashoggi, put the screws to him. Saudi Arabia said they had no idea what happened to Jamal Khashoggi in their consulate. They have no idea where he went. He just so happened to vanish in one story after the next. And I guess at a certain point when they realized that nobody was buying the nonsense story, they finally came clean-ish with the news story that Khashoggi got into a fight with the 18 brutes that got off a plane with the bone saw. Now, under this account, there's some level of ownership that, okay, we killed him. But he was fighting the 18 men like he was Neo from the Matrix and just so happened to lose. This is a nonsense story. It's a nonsense story from the beginning when they said they didn't know what happened to him. And it became even that much more nonsensical, saying that the guy was fighting with 18 men. A group of men, one of which had a bone saw. And we are to believe that he had that bone saw just for shits and giggles because he likes to carry a bone saw. He got that bone saw because he knew when he got off that airplane that the point that they were going to do was torture, interrogate, and tear his body up and take it out in boxes. And that is precisely what they did. Now, there's certain people who are making the point or trying to essentially take the blame for who most likely called for this, which is what they colloquially give him MBS, essentially Mohammed Prince bin Salam or Prince Mohammed bin Salam. Here's the thing. Various entities have used this as a reason to stop dealing with Saudi Arabia. Now, the murdering of Yemenis apparently wasn't enough. Maybe because there was a certain disassociation that you can make because you didn't necessarily know anybody from Yemen and that there's far away from you and many people may not even know where Yemen is. And if you don't know the people, if you don't know where it is, you can easily create a distinction in your mind between us and them. And so even though I know something is taking place intellectually, it doesn't hit home. It doesn't necessarily dig into me as if something was a little closer to home. Well, this is, for whatever reason, a little bit different. Even though they've murdered thousands, they've used starvation as a weapon, they've used disease as a weapon, some of the most heinous things that they've been doing, and we as the United States have been helping them pursue this horrendous course against the law, mind you, against the law, illegally. For whatever reason, this is the thing that has invigorated all sorts of people in all various sectors. So in one case, Australia has decided not to interact with. Australia refuses to partake in Riyadh Forum after Khashoggi's death confirmation. Now, here's the catch. The question comes up is, what is the United States going to do? Now, Erdogan has been trying to tell anybody under the sun any and all information about this without necessarily himself taking the lead in this because he's a regional power in that area. He needs to interact with Saudi Arabia and he doesn't want to be the one to push this. He wanted the United States to push this. But what is Donald Trump going to do? Donald Trump is essentially bet the farm on Saudi Arabia. And if we're being honest, he clearly doesn't care. I'm not going to give up my $1 billion contract for this nonsense. The guy wasn't even an American citizen, right? Right? But political pressure is a bitch. And political pressure is compelling, to some degree, his hand. Now the question becomes, what is that political pressure? So people like Lindsey Graham is hyperbolic about this and is flipping out. But the thing is, people like Lindsey Graham are flipping out because they just want more stable leadership, not necessarily that they want a reorganization with the relationship with Saudi Arabia. My thing for this, and the reason why I'm hitting this and I'm nailing this home and I'm banging on this as hard as I'm banging on this, is because that theocratic regime that crucifies and cuts off heads and hands, that we, for whatever reason, and the reason is oil, has had a relationship with going back since, what, the 50s or 60s, needs to change. Our foreign policy in this regard needs to change. Our interaction with them, with this kind of fulcrum with Israel also, has been towards undermining and taking down Iran. Before it even gets to the point of Iran, the thing of oil needs to change. Yes, these guys are maniacs. No, we should not be interacting with them in these ways that we're interacting with them. So yes, for me, I take any opportunity that I can to kind of point that out. People use this to hit Donald Trump, meaning many of the Democrats were perfectly okay with Obama being perfectly in the tank with Saudi Arabia, never having an issue, never saying a word about it when Obama was in office. But now that it's Trump, all of a sudden, everybody is on their perch and everybody is pointing to the Khashoggi thing. They've been murdering Yemenis for the past year. But this is the thing that sticks into your craw. This is the thing that bothers you so, the death of one man in heft against the thousands that they've killed and starved and maimed, and the kids that they've murdered. This is the thing. Fine, I'll take it. If this is the thing that sticks in your craw, and if there are certain people who, under normal circumstances, wouldn't necessarily care about this, but finally on this particular issue care about this issue, I'll take it. Just because you have certain Democrats that have joined into this chorus purely for the reasons of attacking Donald Trump, meaning using Saudi Arabia as a proxy to attack Donald Trump, if this gives any level of luft to have a conversation about the relationship of us and Saudi Arabia, I'll take it. Saudi Arabia has not necessarily sat back and not said anything about this, by the way. Saudi Arabia, with all of the talk of saying something needs to take place, there needs to be some reorganization. That thug just had a man murdered in broad daylight while the woman that he loved waited outside thinking that he was going to come back. Do you not care at all? What are you going to do, Donald Trump? Aren't you going to do something? Saudi Arabia hasn't sat back. Saudi Arabia has essentially threatened the United States, saying that you think $80 oil is bad, because Donald Trump was complaining that oil was too high. He was complaining that oil was too high because Donald Trump took steps and sanctions from a standpoint of foreign policy against Iran, and he was concerned that the price of oil would have went up and he would have been blamed for the price of oil going up, which would have been his fault. So he wanted them to produce more oil than they typically would have produced. They told him to kick rocks. Now, not only did they tell him to kick rocks, in this particular instance, they made the point to him that if you think $80 oil is bad, what about $400 oil? What about $200 oil? Keep fucking around with us. They threatened the United States. If this is not the time to have this conversation about, do we really want to be this beholden to this particular country? This theocratic country that crucifying, chop off hands and chop off heads, this repressive regime, this theocratic repressive monarch. Do we really want to have our foreign policy attached to these people? Do we want to have this conversation about green energy? And I know conversations about environment tend to go to the wayside. But in this very particular case, the conversation about green energy is pertinent to our issue of security. They are talking about destroying and stabbing our economy. They even use the term, if you want to stab your economy. Why are we allowing this weakness when we ourselves can produce the energy that we require? Not to mention the jobs that are produced doing that. And those are jobs that are created here in the United States. Not to mention there is an environmental imperative of all of this. I'm making the point that all of this is pertinent. It's not necessarily singular for one particular issue. All of these issues, to some degree, fall under a very similar umbrella. And if there's any time to have this conversation about it, it's now. In the very specific case, just to be pertinent or specific to the story. Call of the day. Don't rule out $400 oil of U.S. sanctions, Saudi Arabia. Mounting threats from around the world to punish Saudi Arabia, including the possibility of U.S. sanctions, are rattling the oil-soaked nation and drawing sharp words in response. The kingdom affirms its total rejection of any threats and attempts to undermine it, whether by threatening to impose economic sanctions using political pressure or repeating false accusations. The accusations are not false, and you've yourself, the kingdom, has owned up to them, even though given a nonsense reason or given a nonsense excuse of what took place. That this pudgy guy, who apparently secretly knew karate, tried to fight off 18 men. A government source reportedly told the official Saudi press agency, the kingdom also affirms that if it receives any action, it will respond with greater action. Hence, Saudi-owned Al Arabia Channel General Manager Turki Al-Dakhil in our call of the day warned we could see an explosive move in oil prices. If the United States were to impose sanctions, if sanctions were imposed on Saudi Arabia, we will be facing an economic disaster that would rock the entire world, he wrote in an op-ed. If the oil is reaching 80, angered President Trump, no one should rule out the price jumping to 100, 200, or even double that figure. The mess could ultimately throw the entire Muslim world into the arms of Iran, which will become closer to Riyadh than Washington, Al-Dakhil said. The truth is that if Washington imposes sanctions on Riyadh, it will stab its own economy to death, even though it thinks that it's stabbing only Riyadh. Friends like these, they murdered a man. Friends like these. Why do you want your country tethered to a batshit crazy theocratic regime? And not just batshit crazy theocratic regime, one that could potentially turn your country into a tailspin because you've become so dependent on a product that it's creating that you yourself could get off if you needed to. It's like getting off the bottle or getting off the cigarettes. There's no magical door. You just do it. And you work your way to get to the point where you're okay on your own. We could revolutionize our energy market in this country. No, it wouldn't necessarily be overnight, but God damn it, we can do it. We can get ourselves from being tethered to batshit crazy theocratic regimes like this. I don't care the reasons that the other people are pushing hard against the Saudi Arabia thing. I care about the reason I'm pushing against it. That regime has been murdering people full bore, starving, using disease. We need to pull ourselves away from it. So, I'm not going to keep this one long. John Hill, please, 400 oil. I'm glad you're in the tank for 400 oil. I don't know what that would look like in this country, but I suspect it would not be good. Fact is, we can revolutionize our energy markets. We can create green new jobs all across the United States. The fact is, we have been creating green energy all throughout the United States, despite the President of the United States, and despite this kind of vacillating from the standpoint of the federal government in regards to dumping resources into doing such a thing. Something as simple as as tax breaks for people who are putting, let's say, solar panels on their houses. Hell, investment in trying to push people to get solar panels on their house in order to decouple those houses from the electrical market. We can do it intelligently. We can do it. What we shouldn't do is be reliant upon a regime that is out there murdering people wholesale. And I know we are too, but still, and is willing to murder a journalist in the way that they have. It's time to break this dependence on Saudi Arabia. That's why I push this. And that's why I make this point. Unfortunately, the murders in Yemen is not enough. It takes the one man from the Washington Post. But if that's what it takes, I'll take it. Bernie, Guillotine, Jamal, yet you're still framing this as a false choice. It's not a green energy or an increase in oil and gas production. You don't have to do one or the other. It's both. I'm not saying one or the other. What are you talking about? Maybe I read that wrong. It's not green energy or increase in America oil and gas production. You don't have to do both. Here's the thing. The United States has dramatically increased the amount of oil and gas that it's been producing under Obama. So it's not a situation where, this idea that we haven't been doing that, regardless of what Donald Trump has been saying. Obama dramatically increased the amount of oil that we've been producing in the United States. So that's the first point. If I'm not mistaken, we are exporting oil at this point. The green energy part is something that we should invest in whole hog. Whole hog. Worker co-ops in the energy markets. All right. I'll end this here. Our relationship with Saudi Arabia needs to come to an abrupt end. That theocratic regime needs to not have our support. If Khashoggi is the spear or tip of the spear in order to make this work from the standpoint of getting a coalition of people that aligns itself against that government, be it the Democratic Party and the Republican Party, I'll take it. I'll take it. Winslow, if they raise the price, they lose control of the market, encourage foreign investment and extraction. Fracking produced oil needs at least $80 a barrel, though. Yeah, I mean, for the most, let's burn a guillotine. We export oil sands only, and we do so because the extraction burning of that fuel is considered too dirty by the EPA standards. I see, but not in China and India. I see. Thank you, Bernie Guillotine. Regime change is not a place we'd ever go again. What did ID Warp say? This capitalism, baby, get with the program, Jamal. Money over everything. Yeah, the weapons contracts and all this other stuff. Look, I don't think Mohammed bin Salman is going anywhere. I mean, it seems like he has control of the country at this point. Any attack at this point, especially from the standpoint of public opinion, only serves to weaken the relationship between the two. That's what I seek. That's what I seek. All right, I'm going to end this because I have several more stories, and it's already almost 12 o'clock here. So if you guys enjoy the content, please feel free to share, like, subscribe. And you can always support through Patreon. Thanks all.